Hello, I'm Daniela, and welcome to the July prompt of Stitch With Me in 2024. This online workshop is a prompt a month for slow stitching ideas, and I create a snippet roll with my techniques. Other people just make little individual cards, and other people make mixed media books. Do whatever works for you. I want to get started right away with today's prompt, which is entwined. Now this is a fun prompt where you can entwine, well, just about anything on your snippet roll or on your design. I used a weaving technique using fabric and threads, but the word entwine leads itself to lots of possibilities, and embrace is entwined, and I'm sure you can come up with some other ideas of your own. So let's get started.
So here I've gone back and added a few little elements to my piece, tying all the prompts together. So I took something from musical and added some musical notes for the first prompt, and I've done that with a few of the other prompts as well. I've just tried to work it all together. I'm continuing with the same color scheme, and I'm really liking the way this is coming out. I have the timepiece prompt, musical, relic, and we're getting to the most recent ones, comfort and monogram. Now, since I have seen you last, I added just a little more fabric to my piece here so I can continue and I don't have to add more until the end of the year. However, if some of the prompts strike me and become larger, I can always add more fabric. I haven't finished off the front, the back, or the sides yet. So I like that. I like that it's a work in progress. I also like some of these little playful elements, these interactive elements. They're not super interactive, but they do have a little dimension. So getting started with today's prompt, it's entwined. This is so exciting because there's so many possibilities, and it took me a long time to really narrow down what I want to do. But I want to entwine fabric and thread. I want to make a weaving. So it's going to be a very simple technique, I think. We'll see how it goes. I have my heat erasable pen here, and I'm just going to kind of sketch the shape I want for the weaving. Maybe something like this, like a trapezoid. And then I've already stamped my prompt, and I just set it on a piece of fabric backing. So that will go in here. Maybe I'll even bring this down a little further. Something like this. And now I get to start creating that weaving. I'll set this aside and gather my materials. So I have the embroidery floss that I've used throughout these colors, and I've already thread them onto needles just to allow me the ease of using them at whim. I also threaded a little bit of this cording here, this little thicker, I think it's pearl thread, and I had some of the cording left over from the musical, so I want to incorporate that as well. And I have some fabric which I'll tear into strips to use in that weaving. But before I start that process, I have to create the lines that I'm going to weave through. I can either go across side to side or up and down, and I think I'll go up and down. So I have my general shape here, and now I just want to take a ruler and just roughly where I want my threads to go. I'll use the centimeters here. I think I'll do every ½ centimeter. This is just a guide of where I'm going to stitch my threads. I'll do the same thing up here. It might not. So now to stitch through it, I just choose a color. So I'm going to choose this light blue embroidery floss, and I have 6 strands, and it matches this fabric that I've used. So I'll just come up here on my bottom row, and I can decide if I want to go up here. I think I do. So I'll just start up here using that mark that I made as a guide. Pull my thread through and then just let it unwind. And then I'm going to skip that one because I think I did an extra marking, and I'll stitch through. And then I'll just pull it fairly snug. Then I'll come up to the next one and stitch all the way down to the next point that I want. And I'll continue this all the way across. Now if I run out of thread, which I definitely will, I'll just thread some more. I'll knot off my thread, re-thread my needle, and stitch around. Continue this. Now I can't remember the terminology. It's weft or warp threads. These are the ones that I'm stitching down. I can't remember which one it is though. And I'll stitch my last one. I don't want to pull too snug. I don't want it to pull the fabric. So if I have to loosen it, I will. And then I'll just knot it on the back and finish stitching the rest. And then we can start the weaving. And there I've stitched the entire threads going up and down. Now I have something to anchor my weaving to. I'm going to start out with some gray floss. I'm using all 6 strands. I'll come in at the bottom here. So I'm just going to anchor it here, slightly above where I stitched the thread down. And now I'm just going to go over and under. Kind of just weaving it. This is really just for aesthetics. It's not a professional weave at all, but it's the look, the texture. So I'll just make sure that I have my weavings over and under. I think that looks right. And now I'm just going to stitch down here on this side. I'll take another needle and just kind of pull that thread down. And now I'll just stitch right here. This will anchor the thread. And then I'll just come up here, very close to where I stitched down already. And I'll do the same thing, returning to the other side here. But instead of, if I went under here, I'm going to go over now, and so on. I can start to develop a little bit of a texture here, the little weave. So I'm alternating over and under. And again, I'll take my spare needle and just push it down. And I'll continue this with as many threads as I want, and then I'll alternate putting in some fabric strips. And I'll do one more pass, again alternating another way. Just press it down with my fingers. And I have enough thread here. I think I'll go back one more time. Speed this along. Again, I'm trying not to make it too snug. And I'll just verify that that's correct. And now I'll just stitch it down and knot it on the back. Pull it as snug as I want and tighten up the little weaving. So I'm quite happy with the way that's coming out. Now I'm going to jump in and use a strip of fabric instead of the embroidery floss. So this strip is too large for what I want. So I'm just going to cut it and tear it. Maybe this. So that tore, not the look I was going for, although it's kind of interesting. It's very raggedy. Let me see if I remove some of these strands, how it looks. Well, I think I can make that work. So what I want to do is take a needle that has just a strand or two of a matching floss so that I can anchor this in place. I'm going to start on this side and I'll fold the piece on itself just to get a neater edge. put that in position. Maybe I'll slide it underneath here just so that my edge is all the same. Just like that. Yeah, I kind of like that. And now I'll come up with my thread, my one strand of floss, because all I'm trying to do is anchor that in position. So I come up here just to the left of that thread until I can anchor it securely. And now that that's in place, I can move the thread and come up slightly to the right of it and really anchor it in place. I'll do a couple of stitches. I'll knot off the back. And then I'll need this strand of floss again to secure it at this end. So now I'm going to weave this really ruffled strand through. I think it'll add a lot of texture. So I stitched under the first one, but now I want to pull it back and weave it over the first one so that I'm alternating like I have here. I continued on this process. So this strip of fabric is very slim, particularly at the end here. It's a little difficult to weave. I have this very strange needle that I think I got in a kit that came with tapestry needles or upholstery needles, some specialized needles. It has a very wide eye here and a very blunt tip. So I'm just going to feed that through because I think that will help me thread this, weave it through. There we go. And now I want to try and not twist my fabric, and I can go over and under with a little bit more ease. So I have my fabric, can move it around so it's not twisted. It's a little more tedious work than some of the other prompts I've done, but I'm really quite pleased. I like that texture quite a bit. I'm going to snip off some of these edges, maybe at a little diagonal, and I'll take my thread again. Maybe I'll leave it a little rustic. I don't know, we'll see how that goes. I'm going to hold it down and stitch a few stitches in place. I'll keep my little blunt-ended needle over here. I think I'm going to trim that down. I don't really like that. Maybe I'll just have it stick out a little like that. And now I'll just continue with this process. I'm not looking to make a solid weaving, just looking to get that texture of that entwined thread and fabric. I have some different threads in the colors here. Just trying to play around with which colors I'd like to use next. And I think I want to use this darker blue. I'll speed this along and just continue with this process. When I use the embroidery floss, I'm continuing to anchor the thread at both ends. And as usual, I'm pressing down the thread, but still it's a rather open weave. It's always good to go back and double check that you're going under and over in the correct fashion. It beats having to go back and take out too many rows just to take out a few stitches. I'm going to start over here. I'll tack it down on both ends just with some thread. I'm happy with that. Now I'm going to do the same with the black cording. I'm going to start by weaving it through first, and then I'll just tack it down with some stitches. Leave a little length there. a little distance there. I'll go back. I really think that little turn is very pretty. I'll work that in as well. Really love the way that's coming out. I think I can even go back a couple more times. And because that's an interesting end, I want to change it up somehow. So now I'm just going to tack it down. And now I want to see how I want this to end up. Maybe I'll leave it undone for now and come back later and tack it. I like that tail, it's a little dramatic. And while I really like the weaving, it's not done yet. I still want to incorporate some other colors, particularly this yellow. Maybe I'll do it right here in between this. So now if I stitch in between these two blues, I'm going to have to make sure at least I do 2 layers so it doesn't upset the weaving. So I'll go down. This is really fun to work on and create different colors. So I have this color as well. I think I'm going to stitch just some decorative stitches over this gray layer. Just little teeny stitches here and there. So these stitches aren't a weaving, but they certainly add a little element of texture to my design. So it seems to work out perfectly. I am incorporating the color, adding the texture that I wanted, and entwining all these threads and fabrics. But now that I have my weaving done, I want to add my label. Maybe I'll stitch it right into place over here. And then I'll come back with an iron and get rid of this ink. And then I'll decide what I want to do with this thread. If I want to go down, or if I want it to kind of direct the eye to the next prompt. I can even have this one coming down. We'll see about that. Let me get this stitched down. Just going to use some of that blue thread and attach it. I've stitched and twined down here, so I have a little label, and I have my hot iron ready to go to remove all of those ink marks. I think it'll look a little different when we get those marks up. So that's looking better. And now I get to decide what I want to do with my thread here. I really like the idea of it coming across, maybe with a little bit of a round flare there. And then I think I'll just maybe echo the shape on the edge. I'll stitch that down with a couching stitch with my black thread. I think I'll start here at the base. Well, maybe I'll have it come out a little to there or so. Draw the eye to this little frayed edge of the blue fabric. The cording itself has a little bit of body, so it likes to make those rounded shapes, which is a good thing. I can just play around with tacking it down, holding it in place. Before I tack it down too snugly, I'm going to pull up a little. There we go. And I'll just let it do its little curve. And I'll do the same thing up here at the top of this cord. Take a little stitch to hold it in place and just let it make its little arc, maybe like that. I can flip it around, it just becomes a little easier to work with. Make that little bend. And that element repeats the shape we have down here, but it also, because it has that long cord, draws the eye to the next prompt. And I think I'll try and just raise it up a little. Let me flip it around and see. Do I want it to parallel? Or maybe just have a little bit of a wave going. I think I like the wave idea. So here is the prompt. I want to just snip this a little. I think it will still fray a bit. I can add a little glue if I don't like that look. But I'm really happy with that. I think it's going to need a few little elements, a few little stitches along the way. Maybe I'll just take a little of this yellow, because I really like to incorporate that some more, and I'll just make a row of stitches. So there, I have my completed prompt. I love that I can go back after I do future prompts and add just some elements to tie it all together.
So that's how I created my prompt for Entwined. I really enjoyed that little weaving process. It was a little wonky, a little fun, but lots of texture, and I love adding those colors to my snippet roll. I can't wait to see what you produce, and make sure you post on our Facebook group. The link is below in the show description. I want to thank everyone for their support and their kind words. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe. Thanks for joining me today.